All right, on this episode of True Law Stories, we've got heartwarming, we've got crazy, and we've got another nude balcony guy. We're going to talk about what happens when condos are poorly built and the residents can't pay for hundreds of thousands of dollars repairs, and how Christopher Cobb, our guest today, helped them. Christopher, say hi.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for having me.
And it's great to have you. And we're also talking, what's the problem with calling someone or being called an uncommon whore and its definition. And of course, the nude balcony guy, all this on True Law Stories. And of course, this is brought to you by videocasestory.com. One of the best ways to get more referrals, close more business is through your client stories. Go to videocasestory.com to learn how you can capture more of them in 13 different ways in what we call the fish in the barrel by going to videocasestory.com/bigfish. All right, let's get started. Before we get started, let's talk a little bit about your practice, because it's not really about that. You're in construction defects and litigation. Tell us a little bit about that and what you do in that.
Sure. So our law firm specializes in construction law. So we handle all aspects of the construction process, from contract review to litigation. It's either we're helping our clients price out leaky windows or we're suing when they install the leaky windows. And so we see all facets of it. And along with that, we do a lot of condominium and HOA work and business litigation. And those are really the three branches of practice that our firm covers.
Gotcha. So, who do you represent? Do you represent the owners? Do you represent the associations? Tell me a little bit about that.
Sure. In the construction, we divide it up into really two categories, whether it's commercial construction or residential. Residential construction, we typically don't handle much in by way of representing owners in that. The dollar figures aren't as high, and if it's a defense aspect of residential, it's usually covered by insurance. And so where we get into ownership representation is usually in the commercial projects, the large scale projects. But we also represent contractors in contractor disputes, delay claims, scheduling, change orders, and any disputes that rise throughout the process.
Gotcha. And how did you get into this?
I've been a lawyer for about 23 years, and about 3 years into my career, a payment bond case landed on my desk, and I thought it was cool. I thought it was fun. I enjoyed the technical nature of the statute, and I just asked the managing partner to send more cases like that my direction, and he did. And 6 years later, I had enough practice where I became board certified in construction by the Florida Bar, and so it's become my specialty.
Nice. Well, fantastic. Oh, and you're board certified. Explain to people what board certified means, because we have a few on, but a lot of people, I think, don't really understand the depth of what that means.
So board certification is it's an extra test that I have to take. I'm a glutton for punishment, but there's certain criteria, and every practice group has its own certification process. But in this construction law, I had to demonstrate that the majority of my practice was in construction law, and I had been an attorney for 5 years, and a peer review process. And so once you take that test, you get to hold yourself out as an expert in construction law. And I have achieved that in 2009, and I've maintained that certification since.
Wow. Congratulations on that. That's amazing. There's not many people board certified as there are in your practice area, are there?
I think when I became board certified, there was maybe a few hundred in the state. I'm not exactly sure how many there are now, but I do know it's the minority of lawyers. It is a different level of expertise that you have to demonstrate to the Florida Bar to be able to call yourself that expert.
And so, you work in all these types of litigations. You had one defect case. You've done quite a few in condos, and it happens often, it seems like, especially in Florida. So tell me about this community that was that was being assessed over and over and over again.
So it's up in Jacksonville. I was a 7 or 8 year lawyer, and like all aggressive, hungry young lawyers looking to prove themselves on a case. And this one landed in my lap, and it was a 400 unit condominium complex that had been turned over, but there were a lot of really bad defects, structural defects, a lot of water intrusion, and there were no reserves in place to pay for this. And so, when you think about condominiums, there's, people living in close proximity, but all those people who live in close proximity have to pay for the maintenance of those buildings. And if they don't have the money to do that, they look to you to pursue the contractor and or its insurance carriers to come up with that money so they can fix their buildings. And I remember just sort of the weight of that type of representation is it's you representing the association against probably 30 different parties in the case. And these 400 unit owners are depending on you for their financial well-being, because if you can't recover enough money through the litigation, they have to specially assess to cover this. And in this particular instance, those assessments would have eclipsed $100,000 per unit, which would have thrust a lot of these people who are on fixed income into bankruptcy and or foreclosure because they wouldn't be able to pay the assessments.
How do you go about, obviously you're defending a lot, you're helping a lot of people. What's that feel like to have all these people depending on you? Because, it's their life, it's their home. I'm sure they're all scared that I'm going to have to move. I'm going to have to find out someplace else to live. I'm not going to be able to sell this place. Well, what's that like?
A tremendous amount of pressure because you have 400 people looking to you for their financial well-being, because if they can't recover through the lawsuit, then they're going to be specially assessed. And in the instance of this case, the special assessment would have thrust a lot of these people into foreclosure or bankruptcy, and it would have financially ruined them. And so carrying the weight of those unit owners on your shoulders, it's extra motivating because you want to make sure you do a good job for them. But these cases are huge. There's usually over 1 million documents that you have to look at, 30 to 40 depositions you have to take, maybe more. And they go on a trial docket for 4 to 6 weeks. And so, I've never tried one. They've all settled right at the courthouse steps, so to speak. But all that workup is a tremendous amount of work, and all these people are looking at you to do a good job.
And it's interesting because it seems like construction law and HOA law would fall into the same category, but they're not the same thing, are they?
They're not the same thing. There is a lot of bleed over. They do interact in a lot of instances, but HOA law is its own separate statute. It's its own separate rules and regulations. Construction has its own separate statute and rules and regulations. And so while they do touch, they are separate and distinct. And
so what was that process like in the final outcome?
Well, usually they resolve at like a 3 or 4 day mediation. And so we would mediate once and get some of the low hanging contractors out, get some money into the association, and then we would mediate again. And then there'll be another wave of settlements. And then the last ones hanging on who are going to trial, about 5 or 6 of them, we'll do one last mediation right before the trial. And that's typically when those larger parties settle. You don't usually want to carve out too many people. So for instance, like if there's the building envelope is leaking, you need to keep all of those contractors in at the same time, because you don't want to settle with the window manufacturer only to have everybody else point their fingers at the window. You want to make sure that they're all together, and that way you can maximize the settlement on those scopes of work.
And what was can you talk about the results for this one with the elderly people?
It was a successful result. I can't tell you the exact dollar figure. I can tell you that there was enough money that they could go about and change and fix the outside of the project or the property, repair it. No more water, no more structural defects. And one of the satisfying things that I do is I will go and check out the value of the units for sale in that unit in that complex, because there's a direct correlation between the success that you achieve in that case to the value of the units. And so when the values go up, you go, okay, well, I did a good job. These are now actually productive assets for these unit owners.
And did anyone what did they say to you afterwards? Because I'm sure there's some pretty happy people that were, stressed for a long time, and now they're able to repair their homes.
The best thing that they can do is give me a referral or a recommendation. And so the board sent 2 or 3 other of these condo cases my way But you will get personal handwritten notes. You will get emails. From time to time, you will have to go back when the lawsuit's over. They will then engage me to review the renovation contracts, and so I'll be on site afterwards. And at that point, you've become sort of a familiar face around the community. And I mean, there's handshakes and pats on the back and thank yous, and it's very, very satisfying. It's very rewarding.
And that's fantastic. So, if anyone has this problem, how do they get in touch with you? What's the process for working with you on that?
So usually these types of cases find you. So you can't just go out and find these cases. It is a very specialized area of the law because you have to be very well versed in two aspects: the construction aspect as well as the condo aspect, because of those quorum requirements and voting and meetings and the financing that needs to go on. But they can look at our website, or they can, generally speaking, those cases find us by recommendations from other board members.
All right, so let's go on and tell me about this community where there were people, one of their owners was not paying and moved out. And I'm looking here, the new place called the Old Community for a reference.
Yes, so this was, there are points in your career when you get to have fun in a case. And I think this was one of those moments for me. This was a lady who was renting a unit and had a number of male people that she was renting another room to. And there was about 4 or 5 people that were renting the other room. She moved out, and the new place was asking for a reference, a rental reference. And my client, the former resident, the former apartment complex, would not give her the reference and said, in fact, don't rent to her because she was living with 3 or 4 men at the same time. Well, she took offense to that and sued us for defamation. She sued the apartment complex for $1 million in defamation. So we began the lawsuit, we began the litigation, and I set her deposition. And one of the allegations in the complaint was that my client, the former apartment complex, said that she lived with 4 men, therefore she was an uncommon whore. And that was the actual allegation in the public record, that she was an uncommon whore. And so I'm strategizing with my associate, and I'm like, look, this is too good to pass up. Like, we have to ask her to define this term for us. She put it in the pleading. And so I asked her under oath. I said, well, ma'am, you've made the allegation that we've alleged that you're an uncommon whore, and that's the basis for your defamation. What does that mean? And she said that it means that I'm a prostitute. And we went, okay. I said, well, I took it one step further, and I said, well, if that's the definition of an uncommon whore, what is the definition of a common whore? And she said, somebody who's married. And we all just kind of just looked at each other. And so by this time, the court reporter has already kicked me 4 times under the table. My associate has spit her glass of water out. We had to take a 10-minute recess because everybody was laughing so hard. And so we come back and we finish the deposition. We get a summary judgment in the case. It goes up on appeal. We defend the appeal, and it goes away. Well, about 8 months after that, 9 months after that, I get a call from a workers' comp lawyer in Orlando. And the workers' comp lawyer says, do you know this lady? She's made a comp claim, and we've gotten a copy of this transcript. And I want to thank you because we have had more laughter about the deposition testimony of between common whore and uncommon whore. And I just wanted to let you know that you have made everybody's day in Orlando at least many times, because we just cannot stop laughing about this. And so this is one of those cases where the associate that was with me, we still laugh about it today.
I mean, it's crazy. I mean, just that's why we do this show. I mean, there's great stories of you helping people, but also there's just crazy law stories out there. And so you've come across a few of these. You also had a story of a nude neighbor too, correct?
Yeah, this is in one of my condo defect cases where, one of the things that the contractors' lawyers will do is they will ask to see every piece of paper under the sun in the association. and all the associations in Florida are required to keep unit owner files. And so they make a demand for these files. Well, I usually the files have, a deed or some kind of key information, or there's 10 or 15 pages per file. Well, this one was probably an inch thick, and I'm looking at it, and so obviously you're curious. So you start flipping through the pages to see that there's this person's not complaining about, whatever water intrusion or that kind of stuff. It just happened to be that this gentleman had received probably 50 to 60 notices of covenant violation and or letters from the association because he was standing naked on his balcony and his neighbors were reporting him to the association. And so this guy, we basically dubbed him the naked balcony guy. So you have a laugh when you're trying to produce those documents. And in fact, I kind of go to the other defense lawyers. I'm like, hey guys, look at Unit 106. You're going to get a laugh out of this one. And sure enough, the defense lawyers call me and go, thank you for sending that to us. We did. We had a great laugh about that.
The naked balcony guy.
Yeah.
Oh, that's fantastic. And it's funny because I'm actually doing this and I can see some balconies over there. And I was wondering the same thing. I'm like, I wonder how many people just walk out on their balcony.
Well, at this association, the guy did it at least 50 times in about 2 years. I'm surprised he didn't get arrested.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. I mean, these are amazing, amazing stories. Well, this has been fantastic. So once again, it's cobbgonzalez.com, correct?
That's cobbandgonzalez.com. That's correct.
All right. And where's the best do you spend time on LinkedIn? Where's the best place to follow you, or you're not a social media person?
Well, I think we have a pretty active LinkedIn account through the firm. It's tied through me, so we have Cobb Gonzalez on LinkedIn, and then you can look at my LinkedIn post. It's tied to that account as well. My partner James Gonzalez also has LinkedIn, so we're very active on LinkedIn.
Awesome. So yeah, and obviously, if you have any construction issues or HOA issues, definitely give them a call. They're located in Jacksonville, but you work, I'm sure, throughout the state, correct?
We go from Pensacola to Key West. Yep, all across the state.
Hopefully you're not doing that in a day because that's a hell of a drive. Awesome. Well, Christopher Cobb, thank you so much for being on True Law Stories.
Thank you, Ian, for having me. I appreciate it.
And awesome. And thank you all for taking Christopher and I on your journey. It's been Ian Garlic and True Law Stories.